Oh, hi there! Didn't see you guys there. Well, you caught me just in time. I happen to be looking over some information about the new Nissan Z car. Maybe we're gonna buy one. Let's get into that. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. I want to go ahead and get into some of the first details about the car that I want to talk about, and there's one kind of big thing that I don't know if a lot of people have realized when talking about the engine of this car. Obviously, everybody kind of knows that this engine is coming from the Infiniti Q50 and Q60. I don't think that's any new news at all, but I don't think people realize this is essentially a D-stroke GTR motor. The motor out of the GTR is the VR38 DETT engine, and the motor that's going to be in the new Z car and what's in all of the Q50s, Q60s is the VR30 DDTT engine. It's basically the same engine family, it's just D-stroked. And I think the biggest reason why it's D-stroked is, one, they probably actually needed to make it a little bit smaller to fit better in the engine bay of the new Z car. Obviously the Nissan Zs and the GTRs kind of have always been a little different in size. The GTR, especially modern day, is a much bigger car, whereas the Nissan Z is a little bit smaller. So I can see where they probably needed to actually get a little bit of the deck height down to help fit the engine and the turbos and everything in the engine bay. The one reason I'm really excited about that is the VR38 has already been a very well proven motor for racing. There's countless motors making almost 1,000 horsepower, I believe, on stock internals, with obviously some turbo upgrades, fuel upgrades, spark upgrades as well. But overall, these motors have been proven to be very, very capable racing motors. Now we're basically getting the smaller version of that, which will actually help it rev out a little bit more. And the Q50 and Q60 have already had several examples of the stock motor making 600 horsepower, which is insane. That's on stock internals. To reach that kind of power, you're going to have to upgrade your turbo, maybe your fuel injectors, along with your fuel pump to accommodate to make that kind of power. But even on stock turbos, there's actually been an article that's been released by Stillen, who makes superchargers and stuff as well. Their engineering department actually released an article talking about the inefficiency of the stock turbos that come on the VR30. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Basically just what they've said is that from the factory, these stock turbos are almost as good as they can get, simply because if you start to push more PSI out of them past 17, they start to hit their inefficiency threshold a lot quicker than they normally do. Kind of a mathematical equation to match what size turbo you want to go with what size motor. And so basically what they're saying is that from the factory, for the horsepower that Nissan wanted to achieve, the stock turbos are really good. There's already been a few examples of people easily making 400 to 450 horsepower at the wheels on the stock turbo, with 1 or 2 examples I found of roughly about 500 horsepower on the stock turbos. But really, after reading the article from Stillen, I probably wouldn't recommend trying to push 500 wheel horsepower out of the stock turbos, especially because that's just going to be increasing the boost, pushing them out of their pushing them into their inefficiency range much quicker, and causing excess heat to be made, which is really not needed. Overall though, this is really, really good for anyone that wants to get one of these cars, because if you plan on trying to make some decent horsepower, honestly not even just decent horsepower, if you want to make some really good horsepower, all you gotta do is just upgrade the turbos, add some more fuel, tune it, you're ready to go. Everything else is made to handle it. We know that because we pretty much well know that the manual transmission that's going to be behind the engine is basically going to be the same thing that came out of the 370Z. There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually already been proven a couple of times before that the transmission from the 370Z can easily mate to the VR30 blocks, and so it makes sense that Nissan would just use what they already have that works and just make it work. That transmission's also been known to handle about 800 horsepower, so there's really no reason. I say that that's on the high end. It's probably closer to 600. If you're really pushing a little over 600 horsepower on the transmission and you're just launching it hard, yeah, you're probably gonna break it. But if you're a decent driver that's not constantly just bashing on the transmission, dropping the clutch all the time, it'll probably last up to about 800. Who knows? but that's roughly what I've been able to see on various forum searching. The other thing too is the diffs. Nissan's always been really good about overbuilding their diffs. Everyone swapped a lot of Nissan diffs into other cars because they're a lot stronger, can handle more power. I don't think we have anything to worry about with our diffs and axles. All right, so the next major thing I kind of want to talk about is the overall appearance of the car. Whenever they first launched the prototype of the car or the revealing of the prototype, I was actually very blown away by the side profile. It very much looked Aston Martin Vantage to me. And I think that's mostly because of how they lengthened the wheelbase of the car along with widening the track width a little bit. And then they lowered the roof line from where the 370 was down a little bit. And I think that's really what gives it the overall dimensions of like an Aston Martin Vantage in a way. And that's just what sold me on the car. As soon as I saw the 2/3 shot looking down the side of the car from the front end, I was sold. With just the way the rear fenders flow to the front and how long they are and how they complement the bulge in the hood. Overall, I think the car looks phenomenal. I know a lot of people actually really hate the front bumper, and a lot of people had a little bit of a gripe about the front bumper. And to be honest, when the prototype car first came out, I actually kind of was on the same boat. I didn't care for the front bumper at first. And then it started to grow on me. As I was watching more and more of the release of the prototype car, it really started to grow. And I kind of think I see why Nissan chose to just stick with that bumper and go with it, because it honestly is the best way of kind of combining the old retro design from the 240, 260, 280Z back in the day with a modern era of appeal and looks. And they did that very well by matching it with those new headlights that they made as well. I think if they hadn't made the headlights the way they did, the grille wouldn't look as good, or it wouldn't match what they were trying to achieve. I know a lot of people think that if they just simply added a little bar maybe in the middle of the grille, or changed the coloring at the very bottom lip in the center of the grille, that would actually help too. And I have seen some renders that show kind of those things actually helping the front end look a little bit better. But I think Nissan also knows and is fully aware that this is a sports car that's going to have nothing but body kits made for it, and there's going to be plenty of aftermarket bumpers available, and there's going to be so many people that either do not like the bumper or do like the bumper that they're just going to stick with what they have. And I think the little update they did by kind of actually changing the grille, they changed like the paint code, I think, on the actual grille itself, where the little kind of trapezoidal shapes are that make up that grille. They changed it to more of a gray, and it's not like a dark black, so it's kind of more of a gray metallic finish. And I think that actually does make it look a little bit better. It makes it just look more polished, more finish, more Aston Martin, if I might say. So that's one thing I actually do really like about the car. I'm a huge fan of the looks. There's not actually a whole lot I want to do. I was considering actually waiting out for the Nismo version if they were going to release a Nismo version, and Nissan has said that they will. But they did also say that the Nismo version isn't going to be like how any Nismo versions were in the past, and it's simply just going to be kind of a performance upgrade, probably with better brakes, maybe a wing, probably a lip, something like that. But the bumper and like rear bumper and side skirts and stuff, from what I understand, are not going to be different at all. It's going to be still the same bumper that we get on the regular car. So if that's the case, I'm not really too worried about holding out. I don't think there's any real reason to wait for the Nismo, especially if you're like me and you plan on probably upgrading and modding a couple of things anyways. Really no point in spending the extra money on the Nismo. I really think the base / performance or sport model will be perfectly fine for 90% of people's needs. If you're a huge like Nismo fanboy and really just want to go for that clout, yeah, go get yourself a Nismo. Otherwise, if there's not a huge reason to go to the Nismo model, I think they might actually have a hard time selling it. This might be the first time we see them maybe discontinue a Nismo model after a couple of years, if enough aren't selling, but we'll see what happens, only time will tell. Now, to round up the whole exterior part of the car, I do want to talk about the taillights a little bit. Obviously, they're also a really good retro design from the 300ZX back in the day. This is from the Z32 chassis code of the Z cars. And I'm honestly a huge fan of the old Z32 chassis. I was actually looking at getting one before I got into my Corvette, and even before, actually I take that back, technically before I got into my RX-7 with the LS swap that we had for a while, I almost traded the RX-7 for a twin turbo swapped 300ZX actually. That's how much I really do like those cars. But I think that this new Z car is honestly probably going to fill that hole in my heart, and I'm going to like this car a little bit more than I would like having a Z32, if I'm being completely honest. I think this car is kind of almost just made for me. So next thing I do want to talk to you about is the interior. I think Nissan did a phenomenal job with the interior. They're obviously kind of in a tight position with what's going on with their old president / CEO, CTO, whatever he was of the company, and they're not doing too well financially entirely, especially because of that. So they really are kind of having to work with what they already had. That's why a lot of stuff comes from the 370Z in the new Nissan Z car, and you really start to see that in the interior. The dash, center console, door cards, they're all pretty much, even actually the seats are pretty much directly from the 370Z. They did not change them too much. Obviously on the images with the blue Nissan Z that was released last week, they have kind of like this two-tone blue and black interior that I actually really do like. I'm a big fan of it. It doesn't look like the old blue S2000 interior that I'm sure a lot of you like or know of. I've never been a fan of that interior. I thought it was way too much blue, so I really like the contrast between the black and the blue in the interior of the new Nissan Z car. I do think the all blue seats kind of kill it for me though. I'm not a huge fan of the all blue in the seats. I really wish they would have done something kind of like they did in the prototype car, where it was just a regular black seat with like blue stitching or like blue lining kind of on the edges. I think that looks phenomenal. You don't really need much more than that, let's be real. With all of the seat, the entire seat really being blue, it kind of just kills it for me. I think it's a little bit too much blue for my taste. But at the same time, that can be fixed either with covers or just by getting an OMP Recaro seat of your choice if you plan to actually do something like that. That's probably going to be the route I'm going to take. I'm a huge OMP fanboy, so I'll probably have some OMP bucket seats going in there soon. Hopefully soon. Yeah. Overall, I'm actually very excited for this car. I don't think we've talked about it yet, but I actually do plan on picking up one of these cars. I've looked into it, and it looks like pre-orders and everything are going to open in November, so I'm going to look into the process of getting a pre-order put in November. We're planning on probably selling Joy's 370Z. I might actually even be doing something with the Corvette. We'll see. But ultimately, we actually do plan on getting one. We're going to try and put a deposit in so that way we can get one as soon as they come out and we can be one of the first ones to actually get the car. We're going to document the whole process of picking up the car, purchasing it, going through the whole process of picking it up at the dealership, all that kind of stuff. So if there's anything you guys actually specifically want to see during that process, or if you have any requests, feel free to put them in the comments down below. I read almost every single one of them, as well as Sean. So if you guys put them down in the comments below, we'll make sure to include them in the videos. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm definitely excited for the new Nissan Z car. It's awesome to be living in this era where all these awesome cars are kind of coming out, and we never really had anything like this before. We saw the release of the Supra, which I still love the Supra. Obviously, this is Nissan's contender for Toyota's Supra, and it's a huge contender indeed, especially because of the price difference. Supra is still in its own league at about $60,000 at the starting price, which is $20,000 more over the new Nissan Z. If it starts at 40 or roughly 45, wherever that range is, it's still quite a bit cheaper than the Supra, and you're getting the same performance pretty much, and you're also getting that manual transmission that isn't available yet in the Supra. But who knows, maybe this might change Toyota to change their mind and actually come out with a manual version of the Supra. Only time will tell. I hope you guys enjoyed this. We'll make sure to see you guys next time, and like I said, if you guys need yourself some merch, you can find it on venomracing.com/shop. See you next time.